Gonna be a nice chill evening painting on this dude. Hopefully everything goes right. It's episode number 18, day 22 in June. Got my coffee, got some paint. Let's paint Marlon Brando, the Godfather, in memory of I guess, to celebrate the past Father's Day we had. Let's do the Godfather. All right. It's a classic picture too, so see if we can make him a little bigger. We'll fill him into this area here. That's a serious looking guy. Let's see if we can mix some flesh tones up like that. Let's see. We have a little yellower up here. This is kind of a cooler tone. And, we could probably make something happen. Let's see. I've seen a lot of different versions of this, so apparently there's been, lots of edits on this particular picture. So let's see what we could do. And looks like it's getting closer. We might need to add a little bit of the raw umber. And get something pretty close. And we can start our sketch, our portrait sketch of Mr. Marlon Brando on Late Night Paint number 18. All right, let's look at this spot right here. We want to get that top area, okay? So let's see. If we have his head about here, then let me dull that down a little bit. Ultramarine blue, the cerulean blue is going to help make that a little bit more of a neutral color. All right, let's paint this forehead. Get this little curve on the end right there. Fill all that in, and as we get a little bit lower, it just gets slightly more fleshy, a little more meaty looking. So let's add some little darker, meatier tones in there. Let's look at those eye sockets and just kind of splotch in where we see those. Okay. We don't have to draw any eyes. We just have to get the spots where the eyes are, more or less. And then maybe that little dark spot too. We're going to be using all of our middle tones today. Let's look at this angle that we have, the edge of his face. Let's make that same edge. Or at least let's try to get that same angle. If we have trouble seeing that angle, we can use a little trick with our brush and just line it up. Let's get a nice dark color for that shadow side. Red, raw umber, ultramarine blue. That's a periline red, by the way. So let's see if we can line this up. Let's take the flat edge of our brush and let's maneuver it until it lines up with the side of his face, and then we'll just rotate that over and make sure that our edge is on the same line as his face is. So that looks pretty good. Let's just fill in a nice little area, and let's look at the nose. Got a nice dark shadow here that almost comes to the end of his chin there. That ultramarine blue can kind of scare you a little bit. Don't worry about it. It'll be all right. It'll be okay. Let's darken the side of his forehead a little bit. Wipe our brush, pick up some more of that flesh tone here. A little bit more of this yellow, red. Let's fill this side in first. Could be a little redder, I think. So we can add that in. Let's wipe our brush off, get some of that. I have a little paper towel here. And that keeps my brush clean so I can pick up something a little lighter. All right, let's do this nose here. Let's get the side of his cheek. See if we can mix that color up pretty well. We got our cerulean blue with the red and yellow. That makes a nice little beige, kind of a brownish color. Could lean a little bit green if you change the proportions of the ingredients slightly. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's go with that. Let's look at this curve right here. Let's fill that in. Let's get this little spot on his chin. You have to just get close with your middle tones, right? You're gonna sort of push and pull these colors one way or the other as you work. So you'll be adding a little darker or a little lighter, maybe some dulled down colors. Thank you, Kamikaze, for all the support. I appreciate that. Everyone in the chat today, welcome. This is Late Night Paint with Mike. Just having a little fun with our favorite gangster here. Let's finish painting in his face. Get this little edge sort of sculpted out. And we want to make sure that we get his hair and everything, because his head does have a slight tilt to it. Just a little bit of an angle. Not very much. And it's a warmer shadow too, because it seems like it's sort of getting a little bit of light from the window there. Let's get the ear in here. Look at where it's at in relation to that little shadow. Remember, we're just painting general spots in, so just put them in close to their relative sort of place, all right? It does feel very yellow. Let's see, is that a thing? How do I change that? I don't know if I can. Let me see. It does look yellower on the screen, but let me see, maybe I'll redden it up some. Looks pretty close to me in my point of view, but it does seem yellow in the picture. I wonder if I have a filter on accident. That happens. A lot of times the gray in the background can change the color of it too slightly. Give it a little bit of a warmer red. That looks a little better. All right. Let's continue sculpting our face up some. Thanks for the suggestion there. Appreciate that. Anytime you guys see something that you think could or should be different, I encourage you to pay very close attention. Maybe it'll sharpen all of our skills, right? Okay, so blocking in. The one thing about color, though, on these pictures is that it's really not, no, I don't sell these. I just collect them. These are just like a demonstration kind of things, so they're just sketches. All right, let's get a little bit of this color for his hair here. Get this painted across. Let's get some yellow into that hair. Yeah, it does have a nice warm yellowish tint to it. I kind of like it. The Godfather. Yes, this is from an older movie. Let's see if we can get his lips painted in here, and we want to start getting our form situated. It's definitely an older movie. I don't know when it came out, like the 70s, I think. In the 1900s. back in the 1900s. I like the AI summary. Portrait of the Godfather using warm tones. That's very nice. Cheers, everyone. Mm. He's the guy that asked you to make an offer that you can't refuse, or something. Somehow there was an offer involved. It was hard to refuse. I don't know exactly the storyline, but I know it's, it's a classic, epic classic. I myself have never seen the movie. I know, you can come at me later, but I'll start working on it, Does the date mean my age? What is the date? 22/6/26. That's today. That is today. All right. Let's wipe this brush off a little bit. Yeah, I've never seen The Godfather, but I hear it's a really good movie. So to clean my brush, I just got a little bit of linseed oil and I paletted my brush. That's what we call that action where you sort of maneuver the paint through the bristles on your palette. They call it paletting. Imagine that. Let's get a little black. What we can do is tuxedo. Let's get both sides of that brush. And let's look at where this edge comes out. Cuts right across this bottom portion of his face. We can sort of add that in right there. Should be okay. Should be just fine. And we can worry about his hand if we want. I don't think I'm going to today. But I do like the hand. I don't know. We'll see. I'd have to move it closer, which we've done that before. Let's get this edge over here. Same sort of idea. You want to look at, you can't really tell where his shoulder is because the picture is kind of, it's not the highest quality, but we can get by. We can make it happen. We've worked with a lot worse. There we go. Let's start getting some darks inside of this eye socket area. Let's look at the angle here and let's sort of get that angle in a little more accurately rather than just a splotch of color. Which that splotch of color isn't bad, you don't need to worry too much about it. Let's get a little bit more of this dark color. That splotch of color is there to help us. Let's get it really deep for this inside of the socket here. Nice dark color. A little more of that red. Let's pull some raw umber into it so it's a little bit of a warmer shadow than that colder green that I have. Which makes for a nice contrast, Shows the guy's shape very well. Let's do a little bit more here. See this little cheekbone shadow? Let's do the other side. A lot darker. Ultramarine blue. I'm going to use that raw umber a lot today. A lot. I like the raw umber for doing portraits because you can maneuver it into a warm or a cool shadow, where it leans a little redder or a little bluer. It's really right neutral. All right, let's get a warm little shadow for this spot here. So something along those lines. A little lighter, potentially. Which I feel like that's a pretty good color for that. So I need to darken the rest of my face. Just a little. That's another good reason to use the gray panel, because you'll be able to mix your color. Like I thought that was a pretty good color for this spot right here, but it doesn't stand out well because there's not enough of a dark shadow there yet. So you can put that dark shadow in. Let's see about this connecting piece that goes down, connects everything together. Connects all that shadow together. Wipe your brush off whenever you're picking up some new colors. That's going to help out a lot. Get a little mustache area. Let's see if we can do that. Just darken it up a little bit. Under the lips. A little darker. A little darker. Keep pushing through until you get that dark that you want. Sometimes you don't have to get it as dark as you need to right now. You know, you can get it darker later. But you want to make sure your spots are in there in the right way. Like our eye sockets are not quite as dark as they need to be in some spots. So let's get that cheekbone. We got to wipe our brush off because we got some shadow color on there. A little bit of white. Let's mix that flesh tone up again that we like so much. All right. And let's see what we can do to sculpt out some of this stuff over here. Get that cheekbone brightened up. Sometimes when you pick up a little bit of color, you may accidentally get a glob on there, which could interfere with your work. Make it a little too bright. And then you just got to blend it out. Let's see if we can get that highlight on his forehead. At least brightened up a lot. May not be the exact brightness that we're going to be needing it, but we want to brighten it up a lot. Let's redden his nose some too. A little white, a little red, make sort of a pink color, and we can use that flesh to kind of dull it down so that it's not so pink. But I have noticed that it does pay for me to exaggerate the colors a little bit on my painting because they kind of show better on the screen than they do in real life. If in real life they look different. On the screen it looks nicer if I make them more vibrant. All right. Looks like we got his nose sort of reddened up pretty good there. Have an area where we can add a little highlight right down the middle. And maybe we can start adding in just a little bit of some of that eye socket meat that he's got hanging over right there. Might need a little bit of a smaller brush to get to that, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Tony Soprano has never looked better. That was a joke, y'all. I know it's not Tony Soprano. He's another one we got to paint, right? Maybe we should do a bunch of gangsters. We did 50 Cent. So, and let's darken that shadow, the cast shadow under his chin. That's going to also sort of chop it off where it needs to. Maybe we'll get some black. Let's try that. Wipe off real well. Let's get that dark color right underneath there. I like that. All right, do you start your painting with linseed oil on your brush and start with a dry brush? I start with the linseed oil in the brush. And the reason I'm about to change brushes. This is a smaller brush now. We're going to use this one to sculpt out some, more features, and not really detail the features, but sculpt them out. Like we have our skeletal structure. Now we're going to start getting some, features in there. But before we get started, we dip into a little bit. I have a jar right here of some linseed oil, and I just get a little bit into the brush, and I palette it till it fills the bristles on the very inside, so that whenever I pick up a little dab of paint, it will come off of the brush very easily. So makes it just a little easier of a time for me. That's all, and it also cleans much easier, so I can apply a good stroke of paint. Because I definitely like just applying the paint strokes instead of brushing it on. I see a lot of people like sort of paint it on like house paint, which is fine too. But I prefer a single, as minimal strokes as possible. Not that it matters, it's just the aesthetic that I like, that's all. And if I tried to brush too much, it would take a very long time, and you guys would fall asleep while I'm painting this, and we would both get nowhere. Because I wouldn't be able to get the ideas across to you properly, and you would be sleeping. So I try to keep it exciting. All right, let's get the little crease on his nose right here. Let's look at where it points to. You see how it aims up at this part of his nose there at the very top, like this eyebrow section. So you want to make your little angle point up in the same general area. All right, let's see if we can sculpt out that eyebrow a little better. Just pull some lighter flesh tone that we have right here to kind of sculpt it out. That's really the way you want to try to make all of your features and stuff. You want to really make the outside of this thing sort of zero in on your features in this particular method. Remember, I'm teaching you the way I do it. There's a lot of artists out there that will swear by doing a painting with all the darks first, or you need a charcoal drawing, or something like that. And that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But around here, this is how we do it. We just paint. Not everyone has the drawing skills to draw stuff out, but everyone can look at a picture and determine if there's an area that's darker or mixed colors. We can all have fun making portraits. They don't have to be done a particular way or even look a particular way. I think portraits are probably the most fun thing to paint, in my opinion. In my humble opinion. Although there is a lot of really satisfying artwork out there in the world, so I am biased. I'm not here trying to, tell you that my way is the best way or anything. I'm just showing you how I do it. There's lots of good ways. Mine might be one of the easiest, but there's lots of good ways. Let's darken in just a spot on our nose here. Just a spot. And if you decided you needed that a little higher up, which I think I do, I want it just a little bit higher. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit higher. You can adjust. You could even move it down by picking up some of that lighter flesh tone. Let's try it. Let's move that nose a little bit, just the nostril. And let's pull our shadow back up some too. One of the beauties of working from a very large brush to a small brush is that it gives you a definite time to move on to the next step, right? So I'm going to use this brush until I can no longer use it. Till I can no longer use it. Hey, thank you guys for all the support. I appreciate all the love and support. You guys are awesome. I see all the likes and stuff. That's a lot. Lots of likes. Hopefully. Oh, I used to say, and which I still believe, that whenever you like the stream, right? Whenever you're clicking like as I'm painting, your brain can't tell the difference between, it just knows that your hand is moving and it sees a painting being done. So you're building up like this like muscle memory. Your brain is learning how to paint just by you watching and doing some sort of action with your hands. Isn't that neat? It's like neuroscience. Oh, there's a neuroscientist somewhere out there. It'll back me up on this. Let me lighten up this little area. Background is going to help me sort of chop off that section of face that he's got right there. That's sticking out a little too far, because whenever we start our painting, we usually just sort of overpaint everything, right? So his cheek doesn't come out that far. It's more or less right here, right? So if we look at the distance, and then here, this little dark spot, we can sort of triangulate everything. See this little angle right there? It's like a little arrowhead right on his corner. You make that little shape there. You have to look really hard sometimes to find those little shapes, but they're important. So when you see them, emphasize them, put them in there. Anytime you notice something that needs to be adjusted or whatever, do that right away. Because if you start referencing off of a piece that's incorrect, then it'll sort of compound on itself. And then as you work, it'll get like wonkier and wonkier. You'll end up with craziness. But that's fine too. I enjoy craziness. I think those look great. Thanks for all the heart me's, everyone. Cheers. Let's go ahead and let's continue sculpting out our gentleman here. He's looking pretty good. Let's worry about these lips. Our distinguished gentleman, one of the finest businessmen ever. Finest businessmen ever. Let's get this little angle that kind of comes down off of his mouth right here. A little darker. And we could probably start shading in some of this. Try to paint across the form. You'll be a little more accurate. A little more accurate. Let the brush work. Let the brush work. Let's get that really dark lower eyelid. It's reddish color. Raw umber and red. It's a very dark color. Paint that in. Let's do the other side. We need that side much darker. Let's grab a little black, some of this raw umber, periline red. That's going to give us deep shadows that we need. Let's look at the little triangle that's right here in his eye socket meat. Okay, Look at the angle from this eyebrow that we have right there. That looks pretty good. Now let's look at this and let's double check and make sure that is at the same angle. We could do that the same way by grabbing our flat brush, eyeballing that angle, and then just transferring it over. Looks like we did pretty good. Let's get the dark side around on the edge here. So we're going to be needing to do his eyelids. Oops, where'd that color come from? His eyelids on the very bottom here. Nice and dark. Let's darken those up just a little more. Raw umber, red, black. Those are going to be our darker, warmer colors. That's what we're going for. We're going to stay away from the ultramarine blue just because it's going to cool things off a little too much for me. Let's get that whole side darkened in properly. Little redder. Go. Thanks for the follows. Appreciate that. This is something that we like to do more or less every night. I think we're going to be doing it with more frequency in the near future here. I had been kind of taking some days here and there off, but yeah, we're gonna focus up a little more, get in on it. Let's get this shadow section here painted in, and the sclera, the whites of our eyes here. Just a little bit right there. It's not even white really. It's just a white-ish color. It's lighter. And don't worry about trying to preserve your iris in there. Just paint the whites of the eyes where they go. And we will worry about the irises with a little bit of a smaller brush. Just a little bit. Let's get some black. Darkness. And the next brush we go to is going to start doing stuff like the nostrils and maybe a little more detail on the mouth. So we need that dark. Oh, sorry if I missed any questions here. I'm very practiced. It's definitely not effortless, right? But the more you do it, the more effortless it will look. Because you're basically just sort of letting your mind kind of look and make the right decision based on how you see it. Doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. But the more you do it, the better you'll get. And before you know it, you'll be doing really, really complicated looking stuff. And not just portraits. This is a method to use to do all kinds of painting. I paint, anything like this. Grapes, people, dogs, cats. It's just a general way to do oil sketches. Right? So you can use this method to do anything. Any kind of painting you would like. These are oils. Yes, Auntie Kim. I love that name, by the way, Auntie Kim. I never had an Aunt Kim, but I feel like if I did, I probably would have liked her. She probably would have done things like bought me alcohol. Are you that kind of Aunt Kim? All right. Let's see. Even though I don't drink, so let's get a little color. We're gonna do some background on this. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go with, do you want to, let's try and do some background like that. What do you think? Let's try that. Let's get some yellow and white. And let's mix up get some of that linseed oil off our brush first. Yellow and white, and mix up a dull, sort of bright color to go back over here. One of the nice things about the gray is that your white will show up like that. So you can use white and yellow as a background color. Very bright. And let's use this background to shape up his jawline a little bit. Kind of get that positioned the right way. And we got to maneuver ourselves into this area over here that's not quite as bright. I don't want it to be that beige that's very close to his flesh tone either, so I'll change that a little bit. Just a little bit. One of those artistic choices, you know, we can do that occasionally. Occasionally. Yeah, that's a very bright looking background there. Let's do dark side over here. The balance that a man like this has to have, right? He's got to weigh the good and the bad and all that other stuff, I'm sure. I'll bet you are cool, Auntie. All right, let's get some black here. Get some black. Thanks for joining, by the way. I appreciate everyone that's here. If it's your first time here, my name's Mike. If it's not your first time here, welcome back. Let's just fill that in. Use that brush as best you can to kind of get the edge. You know, the thing about using brushes in a particular way, right? They call it brush handling, is getting used to the same brush, right? So find a brush, find a brand or a particular brush that you like, and use that brush until the wheels fall off. And try to preserve it as much as you can, right? See how long you can make that brush last. And by the time you and that brush have had your last painting together, you will be able to use that style of brush like a ninja. You'll be able to apply paint and you'll expect it to move a certain way, and it will. You'll have a knowledge that can only be attained by doing. Only be attained by doing. Let's get some more of that black and get right up here. It's a little bit tighter in there, I think. All right. And maybe we just get some kind of pattern in there. Let's get another dose of that brightness on here. Since we just used black, we probably should wipe our brush and clean it, right? Maybe. Let's try that. Wipe it off on that paper towel right there. Let's pick up some of this yellow and white. A little bit more. That might be a little more yellower than I probably want it, but you know, that's fine. Just go ahead and just let it work. We'll let that yellow cook. Very bright. Tones down the yellowness of his face a lot, right? I would say so. What do you think? We want to try to do the little blinds too? Let's see. Let's get a smaller brush. the one we were just using. And since that paint is so wet, we're going to have to make our next layer much wetter. Much wetter. Because thicker paint is not going to stick to a thinner paint. So we have to make our next layer here a little thinner than the one that we're applying it onto. And then we can make life a little easier on ourselves. So if you have a hard time getting your paint to stick, it just means it's a little bit too thick. So add some linseed oil, put in there, be okay. Little bit of linseed oil, or you could use some kind of solvent, but I wouldn't use a solvent inside the house at all. I would just keep that stuff for your plein air painting outdoors, you know, because it's very toxic. Very toxic. That's why I just use linseed oil in the house, because, you know, my wife, she's very sensitive, you know. Let's shape this forehead up a little bit better. And maybe we want to get it a little bit darker now, finally. Even though this side of his face is kind of not really as dark as, because that light is sort of bleaching it some. Just a little bit. And I need to give him a haircut too. I think his hair is too big on this side. There we go. That looks fine. Let's go ahead and get a smaller brush so we can start detailing some of this other stuff here. And whenever we move to a smaller brush, a lot of times we're able to use much darker and darker and then lighter and lighter colors. So let's start out. We'll get a little linseed oil into our bristles. Palette those bristles full of linseed oil. And let's start at the top. Let's get some very bright. Looks like we got some little poppy highlights here. So we can add those in. Start giving ourselves a little bit more contrast in our forms. The very bright highlights tend to help the picture out, but you got to be careful not to make them too bright in areas where they don't really need to be that bright, like this, for example. That requires something like this, a little bit softer of a highlight as opposed to something like that, which is very bright. This little spot here. And let's get a duller, we'll get some blue. Maybe we'll mix it up over here into this sort of a grayish color. And this little highlight I want to use for like this area in here, maybe right there on his lip. So it's not such a bright highlight. And maybe it's a little duller too. Let's get this spot right there. We just want to get that light spot. Just that little spot there. We don't want to try to paint across the whole lip or anything, because we already have color there and I think it's decent. We could darken it, maybe redden it some. Let's get some. Let's try it. Wipe our brush. Pick up some darkness for the middle of that mouth. For the opening, the mouth opening, the mouth hole. All right. I know. My choice of descriptive terminology is probably leaves something to be desired. Or maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. I do think that this was probably one of the most like referenced movies ever. Like there's so many people that would quote parts of this movie. Let's get this dull highlight for this side over here. So maybe I need to watch it. I think I need to watch it, y'all. Have you seen it? Little highlight on the nostril. Once we run through some of our very bright colors here, and we're going to need to do the darks now. A little black. Let's use that ultramarine so we can make a very contrasty shadow. Ultramarine, red, and raw umber all together as one in the darkness. Darken that iris up a little bit, kind of where it's going to be. And there's still one more brush after this that's just a little bit smaller, that's going to get like some eyelashes and eyelids and that kind of stuff. Right. Let's get that darkness for the nostril. This side too. Nice cast shadow, and let's deepen the shadow on the side of our man's nose here. Little tiny sliver of darkness right next to that nostril. Darker eyelids, potentially. Darker lower eyelids anyway. There you go. Guy looks like he needs some sleep. But don't we all? We should be sleeping now, but instead, look at us, just painting on the internet, enjoying our life. We'll sleep later. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a shadow edge right here. That's just a darker spot on the face. And then after the shadow edge, there's usually a little bit of reflected light somewhere in there. A little bit. Sculpt out our forehead one more time right around here. Feel like it just comes in a little further. Maybe we need wrinkles. So you know how I feel about doing wrinkles and stuff, or maybe you don't. So let me say, they're not entirely necessary, right? So a lot of times you can get away with not doing a lot of the wrinkles and stuff that you see there. You just have to do what's necessary to get the picture to look right. That's all. Let me see about getting a smaller brush to detail this thing out here. A little more detail. Now we're going to use a number 2. These are all Escoda Modernista brushes. This is the label of them right here. And they're available at your fine purveyor of art materials. All right. Coffee's lukewarm. You know, it's okay. Where do you think that term lukewarm came from? I don't know. Someone out there is a historian, I'm sure. All right, let's see about getting some blacks. into this eye here. Really deep shadow right here to darken that out. That makes the eye stand out nicely. And it helps us with this smaller brush sort of shape our scleras and our irises to be the right roundness. Sometimes that black can be a little too intense, so just get a little red or some of that other dark color to tone it down just a little. The colors that are black and white, we call those accent colors, right? Those are accent colors that we do at the very end of everything to make the painting extra cool, extra good. But sometimes, not all the time, those accent colors are not really even necessary. And you definitely want to avoid putting them where they don't belong, like just making up some stuff. False accents, as they say. Oh, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you being interested enough to check it out. That's really cool. Really cool. Oh, Marlon Brando. I think he passed away, in... I can't even remember when. I know it was like not long ago. He lived a really long time. Let's get some reddish flesh color to go around the lips here. Right where the light sort of stops being light, you know, like the shadow starts taking over. Right at that edge, there's a little bitty brightness of color that you want to indicate. A little brightness. It's like the last little fling of color before it turns into shadow. Last little fling of color. Darken right under that lip. Maybe we get some black, some of that raw umber and ultramarine. Really cool black. Very cool color. And we could use it to sculpt out this chin too. Finally get this guy put in there the right way. A little bit darker right here too. There's another good movie that I remember seeing when I was younger that I never saw this one, but there was one I saw called The Hustler. Child abduction alert in San Antonio. Alejandro Vasquez, 1-year-old. That's terrible. That is terrible. Oh, y'all, if you see him, do the right thing. Go rescue him. All right, let's see. Let's shape this nose up a little bit. No, don't take my. I wouldn't go attack anyone like that. That's crazy. Call the authorities. That's what you need to do. Don't be a hero. All right, let's lighten this area up here. Get that nostril straightened out. Thanks for all the follows. I appreciate that. You guys are the best, the absolute coolest. Absolute coolest. All right, Let's see, we could probably make these eyes look a little sadder just by adjusting some of this darkness and the angle, right? Just a little bit. A little darker under here too. Maybe we get this black. There we go. Make sure that epicanthic fold looks like it hangs over quite a bit. Is that what it's called? That eyeball skin hanging over? Yes. That's what it's called. Let's get this dark red stuff going in here. I want these really deep shadows now. And this little liner will do it for us. Let's see about getting this jawline rounded out at the bottom here. Our collar sort of overtook it slightly. Pick that color up. He's definitely got, I think he was like pushing his jaw out or something when he did this, because in normal pictures, he doesn't have a jaw like this. Because I was just looking for some Marlon Brando in general. And that's just, you know, I got all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. All right, let me use this brush here so I can get a little more effective of a cheek blend. And I want it very dark too, towards the bottom. Make sure my chin is shaped up right. Get that bulldog cheek. And that's another way that I tend to work, is I tend to work like I start at the top and work down, and then I'll continue to do that throughout the painting process until it's done. Always working from the top to the bottom. And the only reason for that is just because it's the top of the head, you know. That's all. Just the top of the head. Get some shadow right here. Kind of lead up into this area that shows part of the skull structure underneath there, the cheekbone. Let's bring this piece down a little bit. And we'll try to soften up this transition. So let's get a middle tone for that. Paint that right in. And we can go back and forth and slowly bring all of the little stuff into, like, you know, the ear needs to be fixed here. So we're going to have to work on that stuff too. But overall, I think we've got a very good painting to start with. So let's see. Get some of this hair. Let me do a smaller brush. I think I'm going to have more fun with that. I'll get a little bit of linseed oil because I want my lighter color to stick on top of this stuff here. It's already wet. There we go. Give myself little highlights. Nice and shiny. Happy Father's Day, everyone. I know yesterday I didn't get a chance to see you all. So let me just make it a happy late Father's Day. Get some darks to kind of shade in some spots in between that hair for this dude. I definitely want to clean up his hairline on that side because that is not the hairstyle of a mafia gangster or something like that, right? All right, let's see. A little bit of our background color, and let's try and give him a haircut. Just bring in paint along the form, or across the form rather. There you go. It does kind of give it the impression that there's like a bright window there, sort of bleaching out the edge of his face, which is nice. Which is a nice look. Sometimes it needs to be redder. But anyhow, I think we did pretty good for today. We got a lot of stuff in. I'm going to do a few little blingy highlights, and then we're going to call it a night. I'm going to do just spots like here on his nose. He's got a little bit here that's pretty bright already. I could probably leave it. But he does have a little twinkle in that eye and a little twinkle in this eye that's very light or very dark, depending on how you want to look at it. But anyway, I'm going to call it a night right here and tell you all much love and respect. Thank you guys so much for everything. I really would like to see you again. So please give me a follow and let's do this again sometime. This has been Late Night Paint, episode number 18. Much love and respect. You guys have a wonderful night. Thank you.